kind of that might so unforeseen, unplannable event is kind of one component. The other component is the profitable operation where we're more, I guess, choosing to operate. It's our choice. There's no requirement to operate. But we are looking at day-ahead prices, which come out at right around 2 p.m. the day before. So if we have to run because profit, a significant profit can be made, we won't know that until 2 p.m. the day before. So that in itself is a little hard to plan around. It's not like it's not like you necessarily get a call out and kind of like the distribution department does, but you only get the afternoon before notice if you have to run or not. So that was kind of the I guess the other mode that we were trying to capture. How do you kind of plan around that, and also just some other details around this. With the profitable operation, typically your peaks for LMP prices are around 5 or 6 p.m. And there's kind of a bell-shaped curve, right around that peak. So it usually ramps up around 2 p.m., ramps down around 8 p.m. And there's also an hour start time, an hour shutdown time. So, again, 2 p.m. the day before is when we would get the notice that instead of working, say from 8 o'clock to 5 o'clock the next day, we're going to be working from say 1 p.m. to 9 p.m. the next day. So just kind of how do you, I guess, build policy, trying to effectively build a policy around that unforeseen kind of half a day notice of your next day kind of shifting your work schedule.
I wouldn't want to do it.
Well,
I would not want that
so
job.
does it have to shift the next day, or could it be that, let's say at 2 o'clock you say, we're gonna have to come in tomorrow, so the next day you work 12-hour day and then you take 4 hours off the next day, or is that, so you're saying at any time, Steve, you're saying anytime within that 80-hour?
Yeah, I mean,
So it's not that you would have to.
Casey, you could work a 12-hour day the next day if you wanted, but again, it's a long day, and
Yeah, no, not the thing you want.
the other, I mean, I'm just thinking on the fly. I mean, if the power prices stay elevated, you want to not use all of your hours at the
Yeah.
beginning of the day too.
Yeah.
I mean, if they last till midnight, you're not going to just,
Yeah.
our 3 hours
You don't
is
want to
up.
hit your 16-hour
Right.
window at the wrong time.
So, I'm sorry, does this policy then bind Casey in this case? I mean, he's got,
This is
he's
what
gotta
the
do it,
board's
right?
saying we're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
It does kind of like it does for distribution.
so I would propose that we move forward with what they have written out and review it in 6 months or a year, and so that we see, I think, again, things that I'm bringing up, like, if we gotta have 2 people there, then we should be paying 2. Maybe things that I'm bringing up or that we're bringing up might never come into play, and so we're trying to think of every case scenario, and I think maybe this is a starting, we've never had this, so this is a starting point. We approve this, we then review it in let's say a year, or pick a time. We can always come back, and all of a sudden if we see that, it's a big issue in 6 months, we can come back and revisit it.
Casey, real quick though, can you talk to me and the board about that second person? I mean, it will require consistent training and cross-training, and a lot of things, but that second person with you, you know, it's always been Tom. You know, when it can't be Tom, do you feel comfortable with like a Ryan? Or are there other people besides Ryan that you feel you can
Julie.
cross-train and feel comfortable to be that second person with you? Can you just speak to that?
Yeah, so, you know, I kind of spoke about this a little bit last board meeting.
That was 7 meetings ago.
Yeah, right, yeah, last month. Not only is the second person here for, safety of, you know, their peer, the other employee, it's also important that that second person is trained and equipped and knowledgeable in the facility themselves, so they can safely be here and not be exposed to hazards that they're unaware of or unfamiliar with. So, you know, I kind of talked about how at some periodic frequency, whether it's every other week or something, for them to spend a day in the generation facilities, working on projects, maintaining the equipment, studying, you know, the different control systems, so that when they are here during an operating time, they understand the process, they understand the readings, the safety systems, you know, what good readings are, what bad readings are, and how to respond to, you know, irregular situations. So, you know, I guess just kind of laying that out there, that it's something that would require just, you know, periodic time periods that they would have to invest, you know, hours away from the distribution department, in the generation department, and just kind of thinking big picture how that may be a negative effect to the distribution department, depending on the project and the number of, you know, people you need on a crew for a project. So just kind of want to put that out there.
So is that like the bare minimum that they would need, or is that more of a, here's what a desired second hand would be capable of? But I guess I'm also kind of curious if we get like that weird event where, what's the minimum that you need as a second person in terms of that, to be able to be effective and safely there, you know?
I mean, I think there would initially be, you know, multiple days of training and, you know, just discussion and walking around the entire facility and going up on the roof and seeing the equipment and, you know, there'd be that initial training period, but then, you know, and again, I'm just throwing this out there, maybe every 2 weeks they spend a day here, and that just keeps them updated with any modifications that we're doing, any changes. You know, over time, they'll become more and more understanding of the different processes and how they work, and you know, not lose any sort of knowledge from that initial training.
So this role isn't so much of a just safety backup, it's like someone who's just there to watch, make sure nothing happens to the operator, but it's more of an assistant in the operation.
Right.
So are you saying that this is a job that is going to be from the inside of Low Light and Power, like somebody here? Or are you saying that this would be a job for somebody that would be like Tom, that's retired and doing part-time? What do you, I guess I don't understand what type of person you're looking for to be your second Tom
And your second Casey.
I guess that,
and my second Casey.
you know, I guess that's kind of another separate discussion. I mean, Tom has been restricted to 1,000 hours annually. this coming year, he's gonna be restricted to roughly 500 hours, due to, social security, that he's gonna be collecting. So, that's kind of another discussion, what are we gonna do, with Tom being here, even less next year, do we hire another part-time person? Do we have a distribution department person start spending time in this department to kind of help offset those lost, working hours? Depending on how much we find we have to operate the generation unit, does that require an additional person? Does the profit, kind of make up for an additional staff, member, or are we not making enough and we don't wanna operate that much, so would we modify how much we wanna run? Because, what's that break-even point, with staffing?
Right, so that's where I'm wondering, with this deal, I feel that we should, whether we have problems or not, come back to the table in 6 months and talk about where we're at. Because I'm a firm believer, Casey, that if we need to hire somebody, I'd really like to hire somebody from Lowell and get them trained to do this. I'd really like to have a job generated here for somebody that lives here in Lowell. I'd like to understand what we need to do. Stop it, Steve, I see that look on your face. Don't make me come over.
What he was thinking was, it's not my problem to 6 months.
Right.
Well, I don't know if I should even ask the question, because ultimately, the board's concern, in my opinion, should be about the ends, not the means, how you get there. And you're right, I mean, it's staff's job to figure it out.
Yeah.
Right, I mean,
Okay.
and how we figure it out, I mean, maybe we're 0% comfortable with any distribution department employee being cross-trained, or we feel it takes up too much time from Ryan. Or maybe we'll need to get a second part-time person that we can find, but I mean, when I bring to you policies, I don't bring them so I can like line the pocket of Casey or give, the next person who's pregnant some money. Like, the goal is actually me saying, on behalf of the ratepayers and board, how do we create like a policy or a climate or a situation where you don't have like Casey burned out and leaving, or we're just taking advantage of him, where he's fairly compensated, but we're actually better off because we're implementing this, or we're better protected. So the goal isn't just to, and that's what Casey and I talked about. Casey knows that I have to be fair to him and staff, but I also have to look out for, I work for the board and the ratepayer. So, and Casey was instrumental with me in developing this, and it was really a collaborative effort where, I push back on Casey sometimes, and he pushed back at me, and he has, he's at a point in life with children and kids that we can't just ask him to work 1,000 hours
No,
outside,
not
and
at
we're
all.
gonna lose him,
Right.
we can't lose Casey,
No,
we
we're
can't
not.
lose him, so. Again, I don't wanna make the policy too customized to just Casey,
Right.
but, I'm trying to think of okay, Casey's representing a person with a family. It's very likely we're gonna have a person with a family here. What challenges does that pose in a very small utility with a department of 1.5? So we tried to look at it, Casey gave me feedback on challenges or problems that he could foresee, but ultimately we came to this conclusion together that this policy could be implemented. It's gonna be our job and the next guys to figure out how we
Yeah.
get that cross-trained person or multiple people or the second, third, fourth, fifth toms. So that's gonna be our job. So I don't want you overly emphasizing how are you guys gonna do that, or you need to do it this way.
Fair enough.
Fair enough?
We don't wanna get caught in the weeds.
No,
So,
definitely.
question on the exception of the 100-hour limit, that's just not required to exceed that, right? But they could if they choose to.
100%.
Okay, just wanted to make
100%. And
It
those.
would be kind of a bummer if there was like some mild profit days that we have a bunch of, we get up to 100 hours, then you get these huge profit days, and they're like, oh, I'm at 100, I can't do this.
That's why you have that extra incentive, and then also like the really atypical event, and, you know, that's just probably where,
Well,
you know, I think Casey, looking at his situation or any other future employer, is like, well, you're kind of leaving it in the hand of the general manager for a atypical or regular event, but in a good utility where the general manager works with their department heads and there's a good trust and relationship there, there's gonna be that communication, and I'm not gonna just abuse it and say, oh, we can make this little bit of money. I
This is
consider this in a regular event.
This is atypical profit, so you gotta go in.
Right.
Well, I think the one thing we need to remind the ratepayers is, one, what do we get annually? What do we bring in annually for our capacity credits?
This past year, well, we're up to 7.4 megawatts of capacity. Let me do the math because it's changing. MPPA on their forward curve is projecting like between $5 and $6 a kW month. So that's 7,400 times by 5 times by 12. At $5 a kW month, at 7.4 megawatts, that's $444,000.
So we're bringing in $444,000 because we can run those generators, and we're talking about $3,900 to make sure that we can run those generators.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about millions of dollars in investments.
Yeah, this is
I
a
don't think
no-brainer,
it's-
guys.
Right.
And this past year, because the auction cleared at Cone, the cost of new entry, there's a difference between a megawatt year and a kilowatt hour a month, but it was, Casey, do you remember what Cone was at? Was it like $250 some a megawatt year, which, you know, I mean, it was extraordinarily high, but we got paid hundreds of thousands of additional dollars this year, or we saved that much because we had our capacity.
Okay, I would entertain a motion to adopt this, what number is it? Do you have a number?
Policy 36.
36,
Policy
section
36.
3.3.
3.3.
I'll move to adopt policy 36, section 3.3 as presented.
I'll support.
Okay, it's been moved and supported. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. On to Energy Center.
All right, the roof replacement project is going well. When I wrote this, it was 42% complete. Earlier this week, they indicated as of October 21st, which is next Wednesday, they will be 100% complete. And there's gonna be some minor touch-ups, so they're gonna beat that October 31st target date
Wow.
that they put out there unless something unforeseen. Ryan did say to me that he went over to the lighthouse's side when it rained and there had been all sorts of leaks and he did not see any. I think it was Ryan who told me that, or it could have been Ron, or maybe it was Casey, I don't know. Somebody told me that, there was no leaks. I believe it was Ryan. So, no action needed, but that's going well. Parking lot modifications and improvements. Pry Newhoff has provided a cost estimate for all the additional exterior facility projects we would like to see happen next year when we have the water drainage system and the new asphalt put on the parking lot. The initial projects that have already been approved have actually been slightly revised downward in price. I believe we approved $286,000 a couple months ago. You'll see that those top original projects, it's been slightly revised down to $273,130. The remaining projects come in at a price of $316,493 with a 10% contingency. I did talk with Pry Newhoff at length, and the $589,630 includes a 10% contingency on everything. So if you divide that number by 1.1, you get somewhere in like the 530s or 540s. In addition, when Pry Newhoff calculated the unit counts say we needed this many square yards of concrete or this many feet of curb. They took, you know, if something was 18 and a half, they'd bump it up to 20. If something was 992, they'd bump it up to 1,000. They always round it up to like the 10 or the quarter or the 100 where possible. And then with their price estimates, they took the Michigan My Deal average prices for constructed jobs. And if something was like a $37.82 a yard, they'd bump it up to like that $40 number. So this estimate includes a 10% contingency plus, you know, I don't want to say an extra 10%, but conservative unit counts and unit prices. Finally, that pad mount transformer area, that's the SPCC spill compliant transformer pad that we'd like to have constructed. NTH is responsible for designing that pad, engineering it, the layout, the bid documents, or not the bid, they're gonna provide everything to Prime New for the bid. I question that 111 number, because it seemed really high to me. NTH sent over a $92,000 number to Prime Newhoff with a 10% contingency. Prime Newhoff didn't realize there was a 10% contingency on the 101,000 that they sent over, added another 10% to get to the 111, 100. So the actual cost of the pad is 92, and they feel really good about that. I thought that was pretty expensive, but due to the weight of this pad and the fact that we could have a digger truck and high-lows driving on this, and we'd like it to last for 2 decades plus, the actual material cost of that $92,000 pad, and just like concrete and your compact beneath the concrete, was $53,000. Now, we can build a pad that is SPCC plan compliant, that's asphalt, and save $30,000. I'm asking for approval of this amount, and we're gonna figure out what we wanna do later in terms of concrete and asphalt. I've asked NTH what the estimated life would be of each pad. I haven't got an answer back. Casey and Ryan both feel that going the asphalt route is just gonna be a headache in future years. You're gonna have cracks and seal coating, and the transformers are almost gonna be dipping into the asphalt. And again, I still had to pose and ask the question, but all in all, this 589 number is heavy, but it should allow, you know, Prime Newhoff, if approved, to go out and seek bids and get us in the queue for all the projects next year. You may be wondering, well, if we approve the 589, where does that leave us with all? Where are we realistically going to be after we do all of our projects? And my estimate is the most we will be spending is $924. So we'll have $71,000 left over for other stuff. Last month I said we'd have like $150, so I'm off. I apologize, but we'll have $71,000 at least left based on my estimate. So it's not like we're exceeding the amount of our bond. That $71,000, you know, would be given to Casey and to security projects. And again, that $924 at this time, based on my conversations with engineers and consultants, would be like a worst case number. And we hope that we end up, I'd love to be like 875 again, where we have, you know, 100+ thousand for Casey and security projects. Does that make sense?
Yeah, being what Harry talked about earlier with prices of all the construction stuff going up, I mean, they haven't bid these things yet, right? So they're doing best estimate to us, and if they bid them right now, should be able to lock them in for somewhat near what they estimate, but if we.
What? Usually, usually, I wasn't gonna get in an argument, but usually there's some clauses in there because they're bidding things, and that all of a sudden, because of what's happening out west and the hurricanes and everything, there's usually some kind of clauses in there that allows them, because, you know, if Wolverine, you know, can't stay in business if you're losing money.
Yeah, so there's some clause to allow material prices to be adjusted if they get above some percent change.
Some
of
threshold.
What they market, yeah.
They
what
threw this number though at us, understanding the current climate of, like here and now. It's not like these guys stuck, I mean, they're understanding
Right.
what's happening in the world, and they gave us this number. Ryan and Casey, you've been instrumental in, you know, walking through the site with the vendors, the consultants, providing feedback, input, you know, participating via email threads. I'd love to hear from you guys, even if it's just your support for the project.
Yeah, Casey here. I guess, you know, to your point about construction costs and material and things like that, I don't know exactly when all this will go out for bid, but the actual construction time, I think we have it planned to start in May, Steve, if that's correct?
We're hoping as soon as they can next year, Casey, and that could be dependent on frost laws or snow.
Yeah, so just kind of wanted to throw that out there, that the actual construction wouldn't take place until almost mid-year, 2021. So, you know, are things gonna get more unstable with raw materials and construction materials, or will they stabilize by then? You know, I'd hope to think that things would become more stable towards mid-next year. But, you know, so that's kind of I guess a factor that it would go out for bid and people would have quite a bit of time to plan this out and be prepared for the work scope. So I think that'll help with, you know, kind of that uncertainty with raw materials or anything related to construction.
I mean, my question, so, because these are all estimates, construction estimate. Are you asking for approval of 589 and 630, or,
You've already done 286,
right,
so I'm asking for a revised total amount for all exterior projects not to exceed 589,630. So they can go out to bid, and granted, the general manager in the future, and this will be something I talk about with Charlie in detail, he'll get bids back, and he'll have the authority,
right,
as long as it's all the projects don't add up to more than this, to sign off on it, so it's not waiting for another board meeting. So if everything comes in under this price, he can move forward. And if he, obviously, I think he'll bring those updates to you, saying, hey, we approve this at this much, or this at this much. And if it needs to go more, he'll have to come back.
okay. Any other questions? If not, I would entertain a motion to go to the, it's basically taking what we had before and adding the 316, 493, which puts it at the 580.
Yeah, I mean,
I think before we had 280 and now it's 270.
yeah, I just say we have a revised amount.
Revised amount.
Update our exterior project total to this new
Okay.
amount.
The 589, 630.
I'll make that motion.
Okay, support? Okay, it's motion and support. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. This last item that Steve's gonna talk about, I asked him, we've had, and I talked to a couple, but I asked him to put this on this agenda.
So, we had discussion last month about the underground conduit system rate study proposal from Geotech for a price point of $15,000. And the board concluded to really table that indefinitely for a few reasons. One, it involves significant staff time to perform that rate study, and with me leaving and all of the other things that I have going on, felt that was pretty, low priority for the transition. Also, there was a concern that we may never see a return on our investment for that $15,000 rate study, so until we just can spend more time really looking and thinking about this, let's just hold off. I've talked with Ryan Peel, president of Virgin's Broadband, on 3 occasions now, via phone and, in a short email exchange. And really, he's asking the Light and Power Board, to reconsider or explore other alternatives, to potentially use that conduit underneath the Jackson Street, bridge near the Grand River there. He's built infrastructure from that point to the new apartments right above the Superior Furniture Building. Being transparently, I did not know about those projects until the last month. I feel bad that I didn't, otherwise I would have approached this differently, but I didn't. So that was kind of news to me. I'd always known about his interest getting to the new Unity School investor condos and his desire to utilize this conduit, which the board made clear last meeting that, he can use because Comcast and the schools are there, and we've kind of set this precedent for here and now for this one particular area, but until we have a rate study done, we don't want to allow third parties to utilize other conduits. So I've talked with Perry about this. I've also talked with Ryan a final time. I think he's actually going to end up putting fiber underneath the river and then going south and boring under M21 to get to his facility. I told him there's a bigger picture here that he may not be seeing, that I see, and that you don't want to have an arbitrary, undefendable rate that you charge for anything as a utility. It's a bad practice. We have a cost of service study done for our electric rates. Everything can really be defended, and as an MMEA utility, there's a lot of caution regarding rates, and for them not to just be arbitrary in nature or discriminatory, but to really, per the FCC code, to be defendable for your community and reflecting the true cost to use that asset. So I represented to him, I think it's gonna be, I hope I didn't put words in the board's mouth, but it's gonna be a tough sell to just pick a rate. It's either gonna have to be something where you use it for free and everybody uses it for free, or potentially we get creative on this rate study and perhaps you actually pay for that, and the amount that you pay can be credited towards your lease payments, so you're made whole, because with the concept of low light and power, someday, if we want to go forward with this, we'd have to pay up to $15,000 anyway. So we have no cash outlay, it's just we're not receiving cash in. He didn't seem to be overly excited or receptive to that thought.
Part of the problem is, I remember from last month, was not so much the cost, but staff time, which we simply don't have in
I think
abundance.
cost is part of it too, because you're saying they're only good for so many years.
Yeah,
And so if we only have one potential user on the horizon, like on the 5-year horizon, then that's a lot for a study that we'd have to redo in 5 years.
yeah, you should have a rate
But that
study.
time was a big thing too.
You
right?
should go no longer than 5 years, and actually, even part of the APPA RP3 application that I just finished today, they talk about all rate studies, and that you have a policy that you have them every 5 years.
Mhm.
So that is part of it. But yeah, staff time was, it is a detailed documentation, intensive process. I don't think it's gonna be a concern based on my last conversation, but I still wanted to bring it to the board for, if you wanna change your mind, I mean, it's up to you guys.
So it sounds like Brian Peel, it will be going under the Flat River here rather
Yes.
than Grand River and Jackson Street.
Well, he was gonna go under, in an ideal world, he'd go under both. Now he'll likely have to go under
And then
here
also do
and
a
then
mooring.
build south through like a whole application permit or boring under city roads or the state highway M21. which is just much more difficult because he's already located on the south side of the Grand. He's built infrastructure on the north side of the Grand, this kind of needs to get under.
And in Steve and our conversation, and that's, I suggest, Steve and I were talking and trying to think how this could happen, and I suggested, or we suggested that he would pay for that study. And if he chose, as Steve said, then we could deduct off his lease, but if he decided not to, if the study all of a sudden came in and showed that it was too expensive or whatever, and he decided not to, that he would be out that cost of that study. I mean, it was kind of, I felt like the board from our previous meetings, decided that they didn't want to spend that money at this time. Again, I didn't know that he had already made, I mean, they've done borings to get to that. I mean, I think he was just going under the assumption that you could either go in that, or we would pick a number, or we would do a study, or whatever, and like,
That's a new conduit, both that conduit and the one further to the west under the Grand.
Correct.
Are new conduits, they're unoccupied currently.
Ryan, I know you're on the call, how many unoccupied conduits do we have at each location under the Grand?
Both, so there's a 4-inch at the new bridge near Walgreens, and then there's a new 4-inch underneath of the river by the Jackson Street crossing. Zero anything in it, there's nothing occupying it. We put it there just for in case we needed it in the future for looping our fiber around for our own good in the future, if we needed it for switching or communications or something like that. So there's huge amounts of room in there. And there's these 3 locations in town where anyone would even be interested in putting a different facility through there. I mean, honestly, I don't understand why we have to do a giant study for 3 locations. Why can't we just let the individual use it? I mean, it's not even gonna occupy much space at all. Plenty of room for anything we would wanna do in the future. It's not like there's a long line of people knocking at our door wanting to occupy the place. No one even knows it's there.
It's an asset that we paid for and we have in place, and this is, Virgin Broadband provides a service to the community without question, as does Comcast, and AT&T will as well in favor. Virgin Broadband is a local company, I would say we should support them.
I do too, I agree with that. I just don't understand why we gotta go through all of this rigmarole to, I mean, seriously, we have 3 places in town where this could be a potential issue. Why do we have to spend all of this staff time, all of this discussion time at these board meetings to talk about this when it's so simple? It just seems so simple.
I think, Ryan, I mean, not to disagree, but again, it's the precedent.
That's what I was gonna ask, what happens if,
I mean, I guess, if you do it, I think you have to, I think an attorney will tell you, you have to very narrowly define what somebody can use for free. What happens if a bunch of new vendors 30 years from now come in and there's no more space?
yeah, that's the other.
Again, indemnification, liability, insurance, stuff like that. I think you're gonna still wanna make them sign an agreement that what if it goes bad or it's damaged or we're doing maintenance on our conduit system, or what if we need them to remove it in the future? I don't know. I'm not thinking of like now in the next year, but there's been a lot of skeletons that have came up because people haven't taken a long-term perspective in the past. And right now, it seems very innocent. I agree with Ryan, actually. I mean, it seems that nothing ever could come wrong of this. But there have been too many things that have crept up, and I just wanna make sure we're protecting ourselves. And that, like, I can see like a Jim Weeks, looks at it, he was the former executive director of MMEA. he always looks at the other angle and what does this do as a municipal setting precedent on behalf of all munis?
Well, we've already set the precedent. And we've already given out,
Well, I think that's what, from the last discussion, from last month, I think we were trying to say, well, the precedent is that we're gonna limit it to that. Right, that we didn't wanna have that be a precedent, that whoever wants to go through a conduit can. You know?
well, I think then as a board, in the future, perhaps in the next year, we need to go through the pain of the rate study. And we need to do that. But I don't think we should hold up the current project either if we can avoid it, especially for a local company.
Mhm. Yeah, and I guess that's the challenge, it's like, because the part I don't know is that, and this is where I don't understand the legal aspect, but you know, what kind of precedent are we setting by allowing this? Does somebody else say, well, if you're allowing people to go in your conduit for free, we wanna attach to your poles for free too?
No.
You know, I don't know what
I
arguments
think-
people are
I
gonna
think
make,
what we
but
can
I just
do
wanna
is
make
we
sure
can-
that we're not
We
opening
can
ourselves
direct
up to that.
staff to get with our lawyers, write up an agreement. And then it's on us, on our responsibility within the next year, 2 years, 18 months, to get a rate study done and apply it to all conduits. Reasonable. In the big picture, $15,000 is not a lot of money.
Mhm.
And, yeah, I don't know what we could possibly hope to bring back on that rate study. Probably not that much,
Right.
you know, which is why Ryan probably balked at, fronting 15, because he knows I'm not gonna be paying that. It's gonna take years for him to recoup that outside, that sunk cost, I mean. And I'm not saying that we have to do this, but I think that it's a good thing for this community.
Yeah.
Historically, we had a cable company and we let it go.
Mhm.
It slipped through our fingers.
It did.
We didn't let it go.
Yeah.
I'm still pissed about it.
I think a lot in the community are,
Yes.
I really do. I think it's still a sore spot in the
It
community. That's
it
something that
definitely is.
you'll have to relate to
Definitely is.
Charlie.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
that's trimming.
that predates you a little bit.
Yeah,
too.
it was 07 or 08.
Yeah.
So,
Hey, Ryan, you said there's only those 3 locations. We don't have any other spare pipe anywhere, other M21, the
Yeah.
bridge from the east to west side, or other tubes that theoretically somebody could inquire, ask us about, and then we say yes?
Nothing else that we're gonna offer up for communication, we offer electrical circuitry only.
Okay, so we do have vacant conduit, it's just not for fiber, we're saying.
Correct.
I didn't realize there was a big difference.
Well, it could be used for either. I think Ryan's just saying we wanna have it.
We want it reserved for.
Reserved for
because you
the
can't put
electric.
both in the same conduit.
Right. Yes.
So what I, weigh in, Daniel.
If we have admin and attorney contract costs to write this up,
We have an underground lease, already wrote up, approved by the board.
right, I personally am in favor of adding more to the standard boilerplate underground lease that has something to do with, if we get approached by multiple entities and a rate study becomes a need because we don't have the room all of a sudden, I think it needs to be explicit, like, for down the road. At some point, it's either, the rate studies needs to be done. If it comes back to you guys, you can get out of the conduit, or you can stay in the conduit and help with the rate study. Something to that nature that protects us from, and gives them an out if we decide, hey, we need this rate study. It's going to be onto the cost of the users. I don't want to put them to where that, hey, come use the conduit, 2 years later, we're like, pay us $15,000. I don't want them to get stuck, but I don't want us to get stuck, or the future low light power board and GM and whoever to get stuck with a, kind of a bad setup, trying to figure out, well, we said yes to these people, but these new people come in, we can't say yes to them because they got in first or however it is, you know.
There's no room in the.
So you're saying, what I'm picking up on, that, we would, looking to the lawyers, that we would allow them to be in there, and we would, do a, in the near future, whether it's next year or the following year, do a rate study, and then whatever that cost, whatever it determines the rate of, to be in that conduit, they would then have the option to either pay that or remove their cables out of the
That's the way
conduit.
I kind of see it, you know, and maybe not even the next 2 years, if we weren't gonna get a rate study for 5 years, maybe it's the shorter of 5 years or one needed because the occupancy of the conduit, you know, requires us to get a rate study and to be able to, you know, if the market for that conduit goes up, we gotta kick somebody out or raise the price to say, you can only put 2 people in there, or 3, whatever it is. I don't know, I don't wanna get us stuck in a situation where it's, well, we had a couple of handshake deals and now someone else is coming in trying to get, you know,
The same deal. Well, that's where we're at with Comcast underneath this one.
yeah,
We had to let Ryan in because Comcast is there.
and it makes me, it's
Right.
not an enjoyable thing when we kind of tabled that,
I agree. I only tabled it, or suggested we table it
yeah.
because of our time with
Oh,
our
I
friend
know,
here.
I was just like, I hope we get that on the calendar very soon. to figure
I
it
think
out.
we could. If you recall, Charlie has done a rate study. We might be able to do it on the cheap. It's not that much, it's 3 conduits. It may be a project that we can task him with in the next,
Yeah.
12 to 18 months.
Yeah,
So,
I'd like to get it done for as cheap as efficiently possible.
So consensus, or we may, is to allow Ryan to go into the 3 conduits that we have for electronics.
we would say just the one, I think at this point. He said he's already has plans or is
Yeah, he's going to go in
moving
the
forward
flat
under the flat. So I would say just the one conduit for now, and if we could, like say, ask staff to have language.
I think what we do is we make them sign our existing lease, ask the attorneys to update the lease agreement at a price of $0, but some clause that if we're forced to conduct a study in the future, or Lowell Light and Power decides to, at that time, you acknowledge that you'll pay the fair lease price in the duct going forward. And if you choose not to, you'll have a period of 90 or 180 days to remove your infrastructure.
There you go.
Because
Yeah.
Because I do think it has to be narrow, there's
At
just
some point,
funny
we'll have to look
things
at
and,
charging that.
you know, like,
Right.
I mean, I think Ryan
It could be a
Teachworth on the
minimum,
phone could acknowledge, there's a lot of places
To ratepayers.
where we had probably handshake deals with customers of ours to install overhead or underground infrastructure, that if they pressed us like another party pressed us in the last 2 years, all of a sudden, it's a big hassle for us or somebody else. So I don't even know how that could morph itself, but I don't know what third party could come along, or who knows? I just really don't want to open that door, so I think it just has to be narrow, and that's all I'm trying to do.
and maybe he is, I'm not sure that Ryan, I think he was, what I was hearing from his conversation was, so instead of going there, an alternative route is to go under the river here and then bore underneath Main Street to get to, he's made a commitment to the condos, or they're actually apartments, rental apartments above the Superior building. So he was.
He may end up going that route regardless. I know he expressed to me that like Canfield was interested in his shop for getting Virginia broadband. So going that way may provide, but for him, I'm sure he wants to loop it.
Yes.
I mean, who wouldn't want to have a loop? So I think, I hesitantly, I think could get behind it as long as the Lowell Light Power Board is in favor of creating a narrow scope and modifying our agreement so that it's clear going forward, we're not gonna get in trouble.
You say modifying the agreement, that means modifying the one for the flat? Or you're just saying?
No, we just have, you said we have a standard policy agreement.
We have a underground conduit lease agreement
Okay.
for this Flat River, for the Grand River location at Jackson Street. When he enters into the agreement for that location, it's modified to reflect
Yes.
at that location.
Is it, I mean, should we be looking at this and approaching
Good.
Comcast as well? And getting all the ducks in a row while we're here?
Yeah, I can do that.
I'd be in favor of that.
Okay.
Instead of having it kind of piecemeal together, to be kind of uniform of
Sure.
how we handle it, some sort of.
Yep.
I don't know, but maybe one day someone comes in and they wanna use all the conduit that we have, and they'll pay us 3 times what market is. I don't know, you never know, but then we'd have to say, hey Comcast, can you guys get out of here? And I mean.
Right.
Couple of years ago, you would have said that no way in heck there's gonna be 5 dispensaries in Lowell either, you know, so.
Yeah, fiber is moving fast, and there will be other players in the market too.
I don't think I need any action, I'll
Right.
just take your direction and make sure I get that done. Good to move on?
Yep.
All right, I'm gonna cover this fairly quickly. Sales down slightly compared to the previous year. However, remember, we did have that power cost adjustment factor increase of, just, 2.5%. So that's, $14,000-15,000. Again, off our total electric sales compared to previous year. Residential sales were up, commercial and industrial were down. If you add up our customer counts, we're almost at 3,000 customers. So we're gonna get there very, very, very soon with all the new builds and condos and apartments going in, so it's really exciting.
That is exciting.
So who's gonna be number 3,000?
Yeah.
Oh, we should have like but it's gonna flux, if somebody moves in or out, so.
Well, initially.
We should have one of those streamers, it's
Well,
like,
who's the first, who's gonna be the first 3,000?
first we
Then if it goes down to $29.99 and back up again, we'll.
should have that commercial, that, can I cut in front of you at the grocery line? You're the millionth customer, it's 3 little balloons, and should have that down in our office, but, anyway, gotta have some fun, we're going on hour 3. Wanted to point out the weighted all-in cost per kilowatt hour has been added to this graph. And as you can see, for the previous 3 years, the blue line is trending slightly down. You see that? That dotted blue line, that's just a regression line. So, again, some people think when they look at performance data, cash, your balance sheet, how strong you are in terms of your financial position, is just how much cash you have. I look at it all in, we're able to invest millions of dollars in capital infrastructure, increase wages to attract and retain staff, keep a strong financial position, decrease rates, and pay down debt. So, again, I'm a finance guy, so that's something I'm gonna take great pride in when I leave, knowing that we're in such a good place financially for the next general manager, that they're able to have the flexibility to do a lot of the things that we need to do, whether it's buy equipment, pay staff, pay down debt, invest in, the system, etc. So, just wanted to point that out.
Are you gonna do us a graph, since that next month is your last one? That
Well, I'll have all sorts
says
of good
Steve-
stuff.
Well, Steve started here, and this is how much money we're worth here.
I don't know,
That would be interesting.
I take pride in it. It is a
Yeah.
team effort, because the board has to believe in the vision, and you have to have staff to, believe in the projects and the work. So it's a team effort, but it's when you see a decrease like that, yeah, a lot of it is purchase power, admittedly, but it's good bilateral agreements. It's just smart, efficient operations, taking things in-house when we can, etc. So.
Yeah, so you really wanna just plot everybody's starting date on your performance graph, kind of see, okay, who really made things go up and who made things.
We've every hire has made things go better, lately, so it's a team effort, but I'm especially proud of that. Aging analysis, you'll see our 61 to 90 plus days decrease significantly. The landlord for the former movie theater paid all of the outstanding balance. So
Wow,
we,
they're supposed to open.
we leveraged a completely ethical, legal, above board tool to do this, but when there's a landlord-tenant situation and the bill is in the tenant's name, for the landlord not to be held responsible for the tenant's outstanding dollars, there has to be a lease provided to us stating that the tenant is responsible solely for the electric costs and the landlord's relieved. We never had a lease. So, we said we're not. You can, it's kind of a cost, if you're gonna operate a business in a city, you should know the ordinances, the charter, the rules to play the game, and it ended up, it was gonna be like $4,000 or $5,000 we would have had to write off, so that actually, I would bet, under previous office staffs, we just haven't had the awareness of that type of rule, but I think we have a good educated finance department now, like Julie and Megan are aware of these types of things and what they can do, and held to it and saved the ratepayers $5,000. So, kind of a little kudos for Julie and Megan knowing those rules. That's all I have to point out there. Outage report, unless there's any questions. 2 outages, both short and both did not affect many customers. One for 41 minutes that affected 7 customers, and one for 1 customer that affected 57 minutes. This isn't on the report, but today we had an outage that affected 1 customer on Green River. I believe staff had power restored in 14 minutes. It was pretty extraordinary. I was with Ryan and Zach, and they had the special train whistle that went off on their phone, and I was like, oh, there's an outage, and legitimately, I think 14 minutes later, the email came back, and the power's back on, so, pretty amazing.
So squirrels are 5 times as dangerous as trees,
Yeah.
judging by the minutes.
Yes, at least this past
So we
week.
don't need a new tree trimmer position.
Well,
We need a squirrel.
but in a way, that's, nah,
He's
that's,
a squirrel killer.
but you have, but that, it just so happened
That's
that's,
the biggest.
the squirrel outage so happened to affect 7 customers.
Right.
But there was a shorter outage. But yeah, they're the biggest cause.
Yeah, well, I know that since I've been here, like, squirrels have been the #1 thing, I think, seems like. Maybe trees, I don't know, but. maybe
I think
office
you're right,
squirrels.
squirrels, yeah.
Ryan's
Keep thinking about
preventing
black
them.
Yeah.
Position.
Yeah.
Ryan and his guys, they're getting rid of them.
Yeah, well, I'm seeing a lot of those black towers.
Low minimum wage.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
So that's
Every
a
pole they
lot.
touch, they're adding squirrel guards and flashing, so it's making a difference. Income statement, 1 quarter, year to date, $58,000 net income. Under budget, year to date variance, but we're still at a healthy amount of $332,000 and $341,000 left to reach the fiscal year goal. We do have some major things that are going to benefit us that we did not plan for in this current fiscal year budget. And it's going to give Charlie and the rest of the staff a lot of flexibility. One, our budget was extremely conservative in terms of sales because of COVID. We planned we had a $700,000 or $800,000 decrease. And because of that, I tightened up a lot of other expenses to keep the same net income. But that next kilowatt hour sale, we profit on average 10.5 cents. The market costs us 3 cents. So every $100,000 in increased sales, we're profiting an extra $70,000 roughly cash that can be used for capital budget type of items. So our capital budget, which we're gonna review in a second, we're tight, and there's gonna be some infrastructure that we have to buy that we always have a choice, but we don't have a choice. We're gonna be able to fund a lot of that just due to increased revenue that we're gonna have this year. Also, Ryan forwarded Casey and I an email today. he talked with the owner and we got an email from the engineer of the large grow facility. And